I still remember the first day I walked into Apex Technologies, fresh out of college with my engineering degree in hand, eager to prove myself. Back then, the company was a modest startup, just 15 employees and a visionary CEO named Marcus Reed. He saw something in me, something that made him take a chance on a young graduate. Over the next 15 years, I worked tirelessly to help transform that small startup into a thriving regional powerhouse. We grew to over 300 employees and expanded our client base across 3 states. As I climbed the ranks, I eventually became the director of operations, the one person who knew every detail of the company's operations. I was the go-to person for problem solving, often working weekends to troubleshoot issues, taking calls at 3 a.m. from panicked project managers, and canceling vacations when a client urgently needed something. I was completely committed to the company's vision, even if it meant sacrificing personal time and putting my marriage on the back burner. I truly believed in what we were building. Then came the restructuring. It was a typical afternoon. I sat at my desk, reviewing quarterly reports, when Jessica, our HR director, walked in with an envelope. The look on her face was enough to tell me something wasn't right. "I'm sorry, Alan," she whispered, handing me the letter. "This comes directly from Marcus." The letter was cold, clinical, and brief. It stated that due to company restructuring, my position was being eliminated effective immediately. They offered compensation for 2 weeks, in line with company policy, and instructed me to clear my desk by the end of the day. The letter was signed by Marcus, but not in person, just a digital signature, the very one I had helped set up for him years ago when we were growing too fast for him to sign everything manually. I looked up at Jessica, my mind spinning. 15 years of hard work, and this was how it ended? She couldn't meet my gaze. "I fought against this, Alan," she said quietly. But Travis convinced Marcus that bringing in younger talent would cut costs. Travis, the 30-year-old MBA who had joined just 6 months earlier as Marcus's special advisor, the one who looked at spreadsheets instead of people, the one who had been questioning my management methods and meetings, pushing for a more modern approach. I packed my things quietly, and as I walked toward the exit, word spread quickly. Most of my colleagues stopped by with genuine shock and sympathy. As I passed through the door, I saw Travis leaning against the frame, smirking. "Tough break, old-timer," he said loudly enough for nearby desks to hear. "But we're moving toward a more agile management structure. You understand, right? The company needs people who can adapt to modern business practices." A few employees shifted uncomfortably, but I held my ground. A flash of anger surged through me, but I pushed it down. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said calmly, looking past Travis to the office I had helped build. "I wish everyone here the best." I walked to my car with my head held high, carrying the box of my belongings. When I got home, I opened a bottle of scotch I had been saving for my 50th birthday next month. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt hollow. I turned off my phone and slept better than I had in years. No urgent calls to handle, no weekend work to plan, just silence. The next morning, I woke up and turned on my phone. It exploded with notifications. 5 missed calls from Marcus, 3 from Jessica, 2 from our biggest client, and dozens of text messages. What had happened overnight? I poured myself a cup of coffee before checking the messages. Whatever crisis they were facing, it wasn't my problem anymore. After 15 years of jumping at every call, I figured I deserved at least one peaceful morning. Finally, I listened to my voicemail. Marcus's voice was frantic. "Alan, call me back immediately. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. We need to talk." The second message. "Alan, please. Everest Solutions is threatening to pull their contract. Nobody can find the project documentation." The third message. "Marcus here again. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Please call me." Everest Solutions was our largest client, a $5 million annual contract that accounted for almost a third of the company's revenue. I had personally managed their account for 7 years, and I knew their needs inside and out. The documentation they requested was in place, of course, but I had organized it using my own system, one I had repeatedly offered to train others on, only to be told by Travis that it was inefficient and would soon be restructured. I took a long shower, made myself breakfast, and only then called Jessica. "Thank God you answered," she said immediately. "It's complete chaos here." "What happened?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. The Everest implementation team showed up for their quarterly review this morning. Travis told them he'd be taking over your responsibilities, but he couldn't answer any of their technical questions. Then, he couldn't find the documentation they needed. The Everest CTO walked out, saying they were going to reevaluate our contract. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "That's unfortunate. Marcus has been trying to reach you," Jessica said. "He wants you back. He's been in his office for over an hour. We can all hear the shouting." My phone beeped with another incoming call. Marcus again. I ignored it. "Tell me, Jessica," I said slowly. "Was it just my position that was eliminated?" She hesitated. "No, they let go of 17 people yesterday. All from the original team. All over 40. That explained everything. This wasn't just about me. It was a calculated move by Travis to replace experienced, higher-salaried employees with cheaper, younger talent. A classic cost-cutting measure that completely ignored the value of institutional knowledge. "Alan," Jessica continued, her voice softening, "I know you have every right to be angry, but the company might not survive if Everest pulls out. I thought about all the good people who still work there, people with mortgages, families, and responsibilities. They didn't deserve to suffer because Marcus had been foolish enough to listen to Travis. I'll think about it," I said finally. Just 10 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Marcus standing there, looking as though he hadn't slept in days. "Alan," he said, his voice breaking, "I need you." I let him stand there on the porch for a long moment before stepping aside. "Come in." We walked to the kitchen, where I poured him a cup of coffee, but said nothing. He sat there, staring into his mug. "I made a terrible mistake," he finally admitted. "Travis convinced me we could streamline operations and cut costs. He showed me spreadsheets, projections. It all looked good on paper." He paused, looking at me. "But spreadsheets don't run companies. People do." I nodded, taking a sip from my own cup. "Everest is threatening to cancel their contract if we don't have you back by Monday," Marcus said. 3 other clients have called with concerns. The development team can't find half the documentation they need, and Travis, he stopped, his voice faltering. "He's gone." I fired him. It felt surreal, standing there with Marcus, the man who had once been my mentor, the one who had helped build this company into something remarkable. And now, it all seemed to be unraveling. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the quiet of the moment. "So, you're here to offer me my job back?" I asked, letting the question hang in the air. Marcus responded quickly, almost too quickly. "Yes, same position, same salary. We can forget this whole thing ever happened." His words were desperate, as if he hoped that the past few days could be wiped clean with a simple offer. For the first time since receiving that termination letter, I allowed myself a smile, though it wasn't one of warmth. "No, Marcus, we can't." The look on his face was a mix of confusion and panic. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice wavering. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch, savoring this moment more than I cared to admit. "Marcus, did you ever wonder why I never pushed for equity in the company? Why I was always content with just my salary, despite the fact that I helped build Apex from the ground up?" He shook his head slowly, still puzzled. "It's because," I continued, "5 years ago, I started my own consulting firm on the side. Specialized Operation Solutions, SOS. It was my insurance policy." Recognition dawned on Marcus's face. "The vendor we sometimes use for overflow work?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "That's right. The very one Travis decided to cut last month to streamline costs. My company, Marcus, the one that's been quietly working with several of your clients already, building relationships, proving our value. We've been competing with you." Marcus's voice was hollow. "You've been supporting us?" "Not supporting," I corrected, standing up to refill my coffee. "Until yesterday, I was still loyal to Apex. But now, I'm simply making sure I have options when things like this happen." Marcus sat in stunned silence as I continued. This morning, I received calls, not just from you, but from Everest Solutions directly. They were quite upset about my departure. They asked if I could continue supporting them through my consulting firm. His eyes widened. Alan, you can't. I can't. I interrupted, my tone calm. Actually, I can. There's no non-compete clause in my employment contract. I checked with a lawyer last night. I paused. And I'm not the only one. 5 of the 17 people you fired yesterday have been working with me at SOS for years. We're fully staffed and ready to take on Everest business. Marcus's face drained of color. That would destroy Apex, he murmured, his voice barely audible. It would, I agreed, sitting back down across from him. But I'm not going to do that. Hope flickered in his eyes, and for a brief moment, I thought he might truly understand. I'm not going to destroy what I helped build, Marcus. I said, my voice firm, but I'm not coming back as an employee either. I slid a folder across the table toward him. These are my terms. SOS will take over Everest's contract and 3 other major accounts, the ones where I've personally built relationships over the past 15 years. In exchange, you'll pay Apex a 10% referral fee for the first year, and you'll offer appropriate severance packages to everyone who was let go in this restructuring, not just the 2 weeks' pay you thought was sufficient for 15 years of loyalty. Marcus opened the folder with trembling hands, his fingers brushing over the papers inside. You want to take our biggest clients? He asked, his voice cracking. I want to save the company from your mistake. I replied coolly. Apex keeps 70% of its business, gets a referral fee from the rest, and doesn't collapse from losing Everest overnight. My team gets the dignity of continuing to work with clients who respect them. The only thing that changes is that I'll be signing the checks instead of you. I leaned back in my chair, watching him carefully. And if I refuse? I shrugged. Then Everest leaves on Monday. The other clients will follow, and Apex will struggle to survive. Your choice. Marcus stared at the papers for what felt like an eternity, his mind racing as he weighed his options. Finally, he looked up at me, his face pale. You planned for this. I smiled, but it wasn't a smile of triumph. No, Marcus. I planned for the possibility. There's a difference. I stood up and motioned for him to take the agreement back to his lawyer. You have until the end of the day, I said. He gathered the papers slowly, his hands shaking as he made his way to the door. Before he left, he turned and looked at me one last time. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, Alan. I gave him a small, rueful smile. I know, but sometimes sorry is enough. 3 hours later, Jessica called to let me know the agreement had been signed. By the following week, SOS had doubled in size, taking on not only the fired employees, but several others who chose to leave Apex once word got out about the company's restructuring. 6 months later, Apex was sold to a competitor for half of what it had been worth before the restructuring. Marcus retired early, his reputation irrevocably tarnished. As for me, well, I finally took that vacation I had been putting off for 15 years. When I returned to my office, I found a gift basket waiting for me, along with a note from Marcus. Thank you for the opportunity to learn the hard way. Inside the basket was a bottle of scotch I had left behind when I was fired. I opened the bottle and poured 2 fingers into a glass, raising it to toast the empty room. To restructuring, I said with a smile. Best thing that ever happened to me. The lesson? Always know your worth. Build relationships. And when someone says they don't need you, make sure you have a plan.